Let's get straight into this, folks. Okay, here's the timeline. The biggest story of the day, of course, Jason Demetriou has parted ways with the South Sydney Rabbitohs, ends up with about a 50% win rate. Flew out of the gates last year. The 2024 timeline looks this way. Jack Whiten, so that's a flashy start. They get him for the 2024 season. Campbell Graham, he goes down injured during the preseason. They go to Vegas, they lose to the Seagulls. Alex Johnston gets injured. Lockie Ilias gets dropped. He then gets injured. They get absolutely pummeled by the Roosters. Latrell Mitchell gets suspended. All of a sudden, we wake up to the noise. Mal Meninga, he's going to be the potential caretaker coach. Everything goes quiet. He drops Damien Cook. And then all of a sudden, Ben Hornby is going to step in to take, in an interim role, the head coach. And it sounds as though, and we're going to get to some of the noise from the CEO, Blake Solly, very, very shortly, it sounds as though they're going for a tried and true first-grade coach. So that would pretty much put a pen through Ben Hornby. They chose to go through Ben Hornby because David Furner had only been there 2 weeks. He'd been there 5 years. So let's talk about this, Demetriou. I personally hate this topic, and I wouldn't mind if there is a coaches' association that they just make sure that coaches can stay there for the year.
Is there such a thing?
I don't know if there is.
Let's start one.
But Michelle,
they're needed.
The thing is, it's not my favourite topic. Some people love it, and some people right now, they'll be frothing on who's the next one to go. That's not how I feel about it. At the end of the day, this bloke's got a family, he's got kids, he's got loved ones who are reading all of this, and it must be torture. Particularly in this day and age, it must be absolute torture. So I don't at all froth on that. I do disagree with some of his decisions. Latrell Mitchell, I said this prior to the year, I don't believe with his aerobic capacity at his age right now, is he a fullback? They persevered with that. That hasn't worked out. Jack Whiten, we were told in the off-season, was the fittest there at training. And your fittest player at training is playing in the centres. This is a bloke who is a Clive Churchill medalist and a Dally M medalist. I don't believe there's another player in the competition right now who's achieved both. So he's playing in the centres. So I would be shocked if Ben Hornby doesn't come out this week, a fullback who wants to become a halfback, and says, you know what, let's just do it. Walker, White in the halves. They just have to pull that trigger. So
I'm feeling like there's pressure for him to do something drastic like that anyway.
You have to. Yeah. You have to put your own stamp on it. So I don't agree with everything he does. I don't know Jason very well, but for everyone who does, they tell me he's a 10 out of 10 bloke. So I have great empathy for his situation at the moment. They say in coaching, you don't buy, rather you rent, because it's just such a volatile position. Many good coaches have been sacked. Wayne Bennett's been linked to the job. I don't think he will be the coach.
I don't think he will be either.
I think it's a bit of a look at this, look at this, look at this, look at this. I don't think he'll be the coach. That's my tip there. I want to talk about this, Michelle. 15 of the last 42 coaches who have been sacked, only 15 won the next week. So of the last 42 coaches who have been sacked, only 15 came out and won the next week, and most of them carried on the same percentages. So largely, bringing in the caretaker coach did nothing for the team, right? So you sack your coach, well and good.
So can I, just before you go any further, because I know you get it, but just on that point, so one thing you did miss out on your key stats is the Sam Burgess thing, which should have happened in between. You had Jack Whiten and the next Campbell Graham thing. So that is major.
That's right.
The exit of Sam Burgess and John Morris effectively giving the club effectively 8 months notice, because that's where we're at now. If you had you're buying shares and your broker rang and said, hey, look, it looks like the company's going bad, pull out now.
Correct.
And you didn't, it's on you.
Yes.
So I don't think Demetriou should be the only one exiting the South Sydney Rabbitohs today.
Okay. So I'm not saying they haven't made the right call for Jason Demetriou, but what I'm saying is you could argue that, and if there's school teachers listening to this, there probably is straight after school. Sometimes when you're the substitute teacher, you get in there and you get a well-behaved class because the leaders in that class are respectful people and they aim up and they manage the classroom. Sometimes as a substitute teacher, you come in and the whole joint's just a mess because the most influential people aren't respecting the person who's running the show and they totally sabotage
you must have gone to
the
school
whole
with
thing.
Me.
Is that right? Were you in that group?
I was a bit of a loudie.
But this is what happens, right? So, okay, you've made the call on Jason Demetriou, that's fine. But I'm asking the question, what next? The leadership group of South, how's your job going so far?
Yeah, no accountability. I'm wondering how they feel right now, any of those players. I'm wondering how they were feeling in the lead up to this, knowing that this guy's job's on the line. And look, let's face it, you paid big bucks to be a coach. Who'd do it? I wouldn't. But there are only a certain amount of coaches, like your Bellamy's, like your Wayne Bennett's, who can tread that fine line. You can't be their best friend. You've got to pull them into line. You've got to cuddle them when they need cuddling, but you've also got to discipline when they need to be disciplined.
Of course.
And this takes me back to the Sam Burgess and the fact that Sam Burgess didn't want to play this out exterior to the club. He wanted to keep it internal. He went to people and said, hey, this is not working. I believe he went to Jason Demetrio first.
That's right.
And said, listen,
yes.
And I'm not sure whether Jason obviously took exception to it and it was his ship and he was steering it. But clearly this has gone on for 8 months. We should have started the 2024 season clean slate. It shouldn't have dragged on for as long as it has.
Exactly. But I keep hearing today, it's a unique group. It's a unique group. It's in a unique group.
Yeah, it's uniquely losing.
What's unique about it? What lack of leadership? Is that what's unique about it?
Yep.
Like, what is unique about it? There's a bloke who's just lost his job, right? And how many of those players who were sent a text message from the coach, and it annoys me, Michelle, so I have put great value on rock solid. I'm not a person who froths on forwarding on WhatsApp messages and
that's
rumour
right.
mill.
We know that.
I don't love that stuff, right? So what kind of person are you if you've been receipt of a text message on your players' chat,
Yep.
and it's come direct from the head coach who's just lost his bloody job and his life's been turned upside down? Which one in the group has felt necessary to pass that on to someone else? And why does it, within 24 hours, get in the hands? That to me, right? So for me, in this situation, Craig Bellamy in 2014, this is one of the best coaches we've ever seen. He regrets that year of 2014 because they went away to the US on a educational camp, whatever you want to call it, and they didn't do their proper due diligence on a few of the players that they had onboarded into the team. And it was enough to just sabotage their crew. So if I always use the term, all ships rise with the tide, equally you can sink with it as well, right? If you've got the wrong people there.
That's right.
The top people in that team, and I don't know who specifically, but I would love to go to Sam Burgess and go, Sam, what you said 8 months ago was bang on. Tell me exactly what you know. Then I'd go to every single player and say, if we were voting 2 players off the island, right, who are the 2 players, and say to everyone privately, right, the poor coach is gone, that's fine, right? But who are the 2 players or the 3 players or the 4 players? I don't know who the players are. But individually private, you're in a cone of silence. You tell me who the players are who aren't swimming in the direction of being rock solid and going where this club needs to be. Because you know what? They've got to go as well. If there's got to be 2 players in the club, because it does hurt the club, Michelle.
Well, that's what a leadership group is all about. So if they're not getting the response from the coach, if they're not getting what they need, clearly the leadership group should have spoken up and said, this is what we need to do whatever. But instead, I mean, we've all heard the rumours. I'm hearing that players have been out and about, maybe visiting the cross, doing certain things. I'm not saying doing anything illegal.
There's a poor coach who's getting a training
illegal.
Early, and they're taking the PL5. And they don't. I'm not even saying they're part of the leadership group. You don't have to be in a workplace to be one of the senior managements to have the most influence on a group. So I don't know who the players are. The players there know who the players are. The person who has shared the text message knows who they are. And it's just ordinary. And it's just, I just feel like I've read this book too many times where the poor coach, who may be incapable, I'm not saying Jason Demetrio is, but the poor coach solely goes. They're never followed by bloody players.
Or management.
Yes.
Let's be fair income. I mean, there's all been credit to the CEO, Blake Solly, coming out and standing up and answering all the questions and, responding to the media. But at the end of the day, someone upstairs needs to be accountable for putting Demetrio in that position in the first place if he wasn't qualified to do the job.
So that's a separate issue again.
So that's separate again.
Yes, of course.
But even on top of that, to add to it, to be taking 8 months from getting warning signs from someone who, like Sam Burgess, who didn't have an axe to grind. He wasn't pushing his own barrow trying to get a job at the club as a coach. He was merely being passionate as a South Sydney legend, saying, guys, this is not right. I'm not sure whether I spoke about this on air last week with you. It was with somebody, probably a little bit, I shouldn't reveal it, but I did speak to Sam Burgess. I remember it distinctly 3 weeks before this blew up. And I should have taken, as a journalist, I should have picked up on it, but I thought I was being fobbed. Yeah. I asked Sam Burgess for a couple of words to add to my story when I was out there working for Channel 7, and he said, look, Mish, I'm so sorry. There's a bit of an issue here at the moment with power. If I go on camera and talk about stuff with you, it's going to annoy JD. There's some stuff going on internally that I'd rather not talk about. And I thought, okay, he just doesn't want to speak today. So I took it as, he doesn't know how to say no to me. But he was actually genuinely had a concern with what was going on internally with the club.
Okay, so if what Sam's saying is true and there's a power problem, right, and there's people who have more power than Jason Demetrio, How's that hierarchy of power going? And why are those people, despite not being the coach, why is that powership group still there? This one says here, Joel, if you're in a normal job and you're not performing, regardless of whether they have a family, doesn't stop you being moved on. It's a pointless comment that he's a good bloke, totally irrelevant. Max 772.
We're not saying that.
Max 772. I'm not saying he shouldn't
Totally
have been moved on.
irrelevant.
But further to your point, if exactly what you're saying, then that's my point. Why aren't players then being moved on?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So you've totally taken what you wanted to hear out of that. No offense, but Joel is saying exactly that if you're not performing, it's a results-driven business like most businesses are. And I don't know a business that's in business that's not results-driven unless you're a charity. But at the end of the day, if you're not performing, you're out on your backside, whether you're a player, whether you're in management, whether you're a coach. And that's what Joel's saying. It shouldn't just be Demetrio out on his backside today.
100%. Unique playing group, right? Unique playing group.
There's no name to that text, by the way.
How many people, honestly, not named Craig Bellamy or Wayne Bennett, right, would handle the unique playing group? Whatever that bloody means.
What does the unique playing group mean?
It's an out. It's an out for the players. And it's like, no, there is... I don't know where Jason Demetrio sits in the salary order, but I don't reckon he'd be top 5. He wouldn't be top 5,
He
right?
wouldn't be.
And he's lost his job for reasons that maybe he should have, but there's a lot now that turns straight into that playing group and says, oh, mate, come on. Look, if Brad Arthur, if Adam O'Brien, if Todd Payton, if Benji Marshall, if any of them were coaching this unique playing group, how many of them would also not be under the pump?
In the Fed income department, you've addressed. There's obviously reports now that Wayne Bennett has shown interest or has acknowledged there's been interest in him. I can't quite work out which one, but my mail is that Wayne Bennett has no real deep interest to return to Souths. He left the joint in a great position, but it's more than. For Bennett to even think, I think it's more than a 2-year turnaround at that club, don't you?
Oh, yeah. But, Michelle, Blake Solly was addressing, and Blake's a good operator by all reports. I don't know Blake so well, but apparently he was addressing after the press conference of the playing group. And you'll only ever know what happened, well, maybe not the way it leaked with that text, but...
Well, there's also a lot of leaking from South.
I really hope that if it wasn't him, it was one of the players, and I dare say Cameron Murray would be that type of player. He's one bloke you would want in the trenches with you. I hope they jammed him and reinforced that, boys, in this room, regardless of what you thought of his abilities as a coach, this guy is now without a job and maybe without a job of that type for some time. And did you play a part? How many of you guys can look in the mirror and how many played a part in this? And it's just, I get sick to death that the coach is the only one who pays the price. And yet the players can use him as an out. Come out and play good now because it's just, it doesn't sit well with me, Michelle. I don't want to see anyone lose a job in any vocation.
No, you don't.
It just... Yeah.
I might also add, I'm also hearing there's a lot of sort of talk around Mark Ellison, the football manager, ducking over to the UK and, visiting whomever. I do know that he's been at Wigan. He's been spotted at Wigan. But I'm more hearing that it's not, and like, let's face it, you and I sort of should know that it's not really at that level, at that football manager's level, that he'd be over there recruiting coaches. So, I mean, Adrian Lamb's name's been tossed up. He's still got another year to run on his contract, so I don't think that's happening. Not sure where that noise is coming from. But I'm sort of hearing that Mark might be over there having a few discussions with recruiting, but also with offloading some players and maybe getting some conversations started with having to get a few players moved on.
Yes.
I'm just hearing that.
My final point on this is work out who those players are. And then...
But is it 8 months too late?
No. You know why? Because now is the opportune time to sell players who have got a big name, who aren't performing, because there are clubs now, as players are getting injured and falling apart, who desperately need a number, insert blank, whatever it is. This is the time. You hold on to them too late and you're stuck with them on the books on this inflated salary that you'll never get back. This is the time now, if you can identify those players, to say, okay, let's think a few steps ahead here. Off you go. Someone else pays full freight, doesn't impact your salary cap. And you know what? That player will probably play better anyway for a fresh scene. It's probably a win-win for all parties. I just want to leave you with this. This is bloody coaching for you as we go to the break. The New York Yankees. So it doesn't matter what sport it is. Coaching's brutal. In 1983, George Steinbrenner, now he's the owner, and you sort of have gags about him in Seinfeld. He fired Billy Martin, who was a former player, And he ultimately fired him 4 times. So he got the job 4 times at the New York Yankees. But on this occasion, he'd fired Billy Martin. And he offered the job to Yogi Berra, who's another Yankees legend. As Yogi considered taking the job, he reached out to his old mate Billy Martin for advice. And Billy, who had just been fired for the 3rd time by Steinbrenner, well, he said, don't worry, Yogi, I've got you covered. In the event that sort of you-know-what hits the fan, I've left 2 envelopes in the desk in the manager's office. So just go for it. And if you need to crack open one of those envelopes, if the you-know-what hits the fans, go for your life. So the 1984 season for the Yankees got off to a flyer. But in late May, the team went on a slide and started to losing. So the press was ganging up, the pressures were on, and they were questioning Yogi's managerial moves, and Steinbrenner was super angry, the owner. After a tough loss to the Red Sox, Yogi remembered what Billy Martin had said 6 months before. So he sat in his office and he thought about it, and he went to the managerial's office and he thought, you know what? Yogi said, I've got you covered. Open one of the envelopes if you know what hits the fan. So he goes in, opens the first envelope. And the advice from Billy Martin was on a small piece of paper, and it only had 4 words. Blame everything on me. Written by Billy Martin. So there he goes, right? So Yogi Berra headed to the post-game press conference and he laid it on thick. Martin this, Billy Martin that, and it worked perfectly. So he got the blame off him, the spotlight onto Billy Martin, and he was off the hook for a period of time. Berra then continued on, but in August, the team began losing again. He was under pressure once again. He was in the hot seat, and Steinbrenner was absolutely fuming. So now at a loss, Yogi thought, what can I do? He remembered there was a second note. So Billy Martin had left that second note. He goes to the managerial's office, and he opened the second envelope. And this advice was only 3 words. Prepare 2 envelopes.
Oh,
He was going. It's a tough old sport, Michelle, isn't it?
It is.
It's a tough,
I tell you what, the
sport.
text line is lighting up as well, so plenty to get through.
Let's go to the break. Let's open up the day for you. You can text 0457 736 736, where clearly thousands of you are, or you can also call 1300 01